Today, I want to share with you one of the most foundational aspects of segmenting customers. We are going to talk about RFM analysis, which is a foundational principle behind customer segmentation. It's at the foundation of success with your marketing approaches and a critical part of your business operation, that is customer support. If you've been in the business game for some time, most likely you've already heard of RFM and how to use RFM to segment customers for maximum profitability. I've included RFM in several articles on entrepreneurship in a box. Let me ask a question. If you can choose, who would you like to be your customer? If you prepare some specific marketing campaign, would you target your customers who most recently have purchased from you, or customers whose last purchase was a year or more ago? Next, do you want someone who purchases regularly or someone who is not interested in purchasing your product or services? Also, would you want customers who will spend little or a lot of money with your business? So these questions lead us to the response, what is RFM analysis? Well, RFM stands for Recency, Frequency, and Monetary Value of your customers. Let's start from the first, recency. Recency is how recent a specific customer's last purchase has been. Simply, it's a part of RFM that tells you when a customer bought something from you last time. As it says here, what is the time frame between customer orders? When was the last time somebody purchased the product? Remember, the more recent the purchase is, the more valuable that customer is for you. So, individuals who have made a purchase within the last 30 days are the customers for you. This is because they are still in purchasing mode, especially if they feel satisfied with your products or services. As you can see, recency can be a good starting indicator for segmentation because this part of the RFM formula is about the importance of your customers in the present time that we will use to predict future behavior and then impact on their future behaviors. On the other side, the frequency part of the RFM formula is how many orders a customer has placed with your business in a specific analyzed time frame. The higher the frequency, the more products a customer purchases and the more valuable they are to your company. A one-time buyer is not beneficial as 2 or 3-time buyer, and a 4-time buyer is more valuable than a 3-time or 2-time buyer. When discussing more valuable customers, I mean about the value in predicting specific customers' future transactions. If the customer purchases multiple products, let's say last year, it will have a higher value to your company than a customer who's a one-time buyer. So a more frequent customer is always more valuable for you than a prospect or one-time buyer. This is really an indication of usage and satisfaction. If most of your customers are only one-time buyers, that's an indication to you of either a low usage level or a low satisfaction level, or both at the same time. Low usage means they purchased your product and they didn't go through it, or they didn't like it, and that's why they didn't use it. So recency and frequency will tell you a lot about your customers' satisfaction and usage. Your marketing goal for a one-time buyer is to turn them into a 2-time buyer. Your marketing to a 2-time buyer aims to turn them into loyal customers. You can't send a one-size-fits-all message to every one of these segments and expect to achieve the desired outcome. The goal is to rise customers with a low average order value to the next segment. The last part of the RFM formula is the customer's monetary value for your company. Monetary value is all about how much money your customers have spent. Let's say last year. I will use last year for a specific time period because later I will show you how you can conduct RFM analysis, and I will use the data from last year to make decisions for the current year. So the monetary value will respond to the question of how much money your customers spent last year. Who is your most valuable customer? Who is the customer that has spent the most money with you? Who is the customer that has spent the least money with you? These are the questions that the monetary value part of the RFM formula will answer. What do you think? A customer who spent $10,000 with your company last year is probably a lot more valuable from a future marketing perspective and customer support than a customer who only spent $100. The last part of the RFM analysis gives a code to each customer based on recency, frequency, and monetary value. This code will help you to segment your customers into different groups, which will help you to target your marketing and sales and after-sales efforts like customer support more effectively. So why RFM? Simply understanding recency, frequency, and monetary value and who has the highest RFM value on your list or on your current customer base will tell you who should be your highest focus. Not all customers are created equally. Therefore, not all of them should be treated in the same way related to the value you give them. Customers with a high RFM value should be treated differently from customers with a low RFM value. You should be investing in customers with a high RFM value much more than what you should invest in customers with a lower RFM value. Also, when a customer goes from a high RFM value to a low RFM value, that's an important indicator for you when you see a trend where many of your customers are moving from high to low. That tells you it's the right time to take action. It's time to be proactive to prevent customers from leaving your business. The best indicator of future behavior is past behavior. Past behavior doesn't tell us everything we need, but it's probably your most cost-effective data source if you already have the data and have it through your sales records. Okay, now that you understand the RFM formula, or better said RFM analysis, and how it works, let's move on to how you can conduct it using a Google Sheet or any other spreadsheet applications like Microsoft Excel, for example. In the next part of this video, I will walk you through the process step by step, so you will have a complete understanding of how to conduct RFM analysis for your business. Okay. I will open a new spreadsheet in Google Sheets and name it RFM Analysis 5x5 grid, because we will make visualization using 5x5 grid. Then I will paste my data from my sales records from last year, for example. Usually what you will need is all records for all customers. So that means, for example, all customers, their transaction dates and amount of each transaction. We will start with 3 columns. We will have customer ID in the A column, I will have transaction date in a B column and amount of transaction in the C column. The question now is how we can make from this data a new table where we will have in the first column customer ID, in the second column the last date of transaction, not all these transactions, because the same customer will have several times different transactions and at different dates. We want the last date of transaction. And in the third column, the sum of individual amounts of transactions for each customer. So it will be sum of each individual amounts in this case. The easiest way to do this is to use pivot table. So I will go to insert. Let's say I will go to insert. Then we'll select pivot table. I will create it into the new sheet. So now in the rows part, I will add customer ID. Then in values, I will add transaction date in this case, but we want here to change it in max value. We want to get the results when is the last transaction from the specific customer from our sales records. As you can see in the second column, the latest date of transaction that we will use to calculate the recency part of the RFM formula. And now, what are the next requirements? First, we need the number of purchases for the frequency part in the third column. So again, I will add inside values additional. In this case, I will again use transaction date, but I will not use max, but it will be count A. So I have the counts that each of these customers is making the frequency of their purchases. So for C1, we have the last transaction on June 23rd, and we have 5 transactions in the whole year. If I want to check it if it is okay, simply I will add filters inside the row. If I choose, let's say, only for C1 customer, we can see that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That also can be seen here, 5 transactions, or this is frequency, and the sum or total amount that this specific customer have spent with our company is $5,802. If we go back here, we can see still we have not calculated the total amount, but let's add it again. Inside the values, I will add the amount of transaction, and this is okay sum. So you can see $5,802, and it is the same here as a sum that all of these individual transactions will bring to the company. When we have this data, I will open a new sheet where I will paste them as values to not use dynamic pivot table in our calculation. So let's make a new sheet. I will go to a pivot table that we created previously and select all the data. I don't want totals, so I will copy them and paste them as values only, so they will not be connected to our pivot table here. Now we have prepared our data for our RFM analysis. As you can see, we have the last purchase date in column B. Let's change them last transaction date. Now this will be frequency. In the last part we will have total amount that will represent a monetary value. Now the question is to find the recency level, and we can easily calculate the number of days since the last purchase from, let's say, we are doing this in January 2025, and we want to see until the January 1st 2025 in column E. So we want to find how many days are passed from the last transaction or the last purchase for the specific customer. In this case, in row 2 it is C1 customer. If I go into the cell E2, I will simply put equal, then because we are using date function here, I will put the date 2025 for the year, then I will have one for month and one for day. Then I will put the minus sign and choose the column B, or in this case let's take B2. So now we will get how many days are passed after the last transaction from the specific customer. As you can see, Google Sheets give us a suggestion, and probably it is okay, and I will accept it. So if I check, okay, it is changing B3, now we have B4, everything is okay. Let's explain this function date that we are using to find the day since the last purchase. So in this case, date 2025 1 the first part of the function, and it creates a date object for January 1st 2025. On the other side, this will refers to the last transaction date for the first customer in our data records, and the subtraction operator calculates the difference between the two dates. So the results in column E will be the number of days between the last transaction date for each customer and January 1st 2025. Now I have the date since the last purchase and want to rank them in numbers from 1 to 5 to start conducting RFM analysis, or better said, to find a recency value for each customer. For this purpose, I will use the column F for recency level or recency score. In this case, for this purpose, I've tried different solutions, but the best way is to use percentiles for a more data-driven and less subjective approach to ranking recency. This method will divide your customers into 5 equal groups based on their recency, days since last purchase. Here's how you can do it using the %rank function in Google Sheets. So I will put it here to be more visible. You can see the whole formula. Don't worry, it looks scary at the first, but I will explain each part of the formula so you will understand it. The first part, this %rank if function, this part calculates the percentile rank of the value in cell E2 within the entire range of days since the last purchase, from E2 to the last row in the column E, and the $sign before E and 2 make the range absolute, so it doesn't change when you drag the formula down. The results will be a number between 0 and 1 representing the percentile. This starts a series of simply nested if statements. If the percentile rank is less than or equal to 0.2, in this case, meaning the customers in the top 20% of the most recent purchases, they get a rank of 5. Next, we tell okay, if the first condition is false, the formula moves to the next if. And we have the next if, where if the percentile rank is higher than 0.2 but less than or equal to 0.4, so we are talking about the next 20%, they get a rank of 4. We will continue next if the percentile rank is greater than 0.4 but less than or equal to 0.6, then these are middle 20% and they will get rank 3. So if the percentile rank is higher than 0.6 but less than or equal to 0.8 in this case. We are talking about the next 20%, they get a rank of 2. The one here, if none of the above conditions are met, meaning the percentile rank is greater than 0.8, putting them in the bottom 20% of least recent purchasers, they get a rank of 0. Simply, this method uses the actual distribution of your data to determine the ranks. Instead of fixed cutoffs, it dynamically assigns ranks based on where each customer falls within the spectrum of recency. If we drag this function until the last row inside our data, then we will get the recency value for all of them. As you can see, that they can be between 1 to 5. So this means that recency is 1 for C1 customer, but C10 customer you have less total amount and less purchasing level, but it have the recency rank of 5 because they have bought in the last 30 days between December 19 until the January 1st, 2025. So in this case, the 5 will be related to the top 20% of customers that have made the most recent purchases. Now, when we calculate the R part of the formula, let's move on to the F or frequency part. Now I want to rank between 1 to 5 the frequency part of RFM analysis. So in column C, I already have the frequency of purchases, which shows how many times each customer bought something in 2024. So how do we calculate F rankings in column G? Now in the G2 cell, I'll put this formula here. As you can see, this formula is similar to the one we used for recency ranks. However, it is different in the columns we use to calculate the rank with percentiles, and in this case it is not E, but we are using column C because we are talking about this column related to frequency of transactions. The next difference is that we give a higher rank of frequency if we have a higher number in frequency of purchase. It is opposite from what we have used with the last transaction date to calculate recency, because when the number of difference days since last purchase is less, we have higher rank. In case of the frequency, when the number of frequency is higher, we will have also the higher rank. So with a value of 1, we will have the bottom 20% of performers. When it comes to purchasing frequency, the logic is the same. When it is less, the record from 0.2 is 1, and the last 4 and 5 is 0.8. Now, if I put enter, it suggests me the same thing. If I accept, let's check. Okay, it's changing C3, C2. Okay, it is everything okay. And in other case, if we don't have the suggestion, we will need to drag the function to the rest of the rows in column G, and we will get the frequency rank for each customer ranked between 1 and 5 in this case. By applying this formula to that column, you can automatically categorize your customer base into 5 distinct groups based on how often each customer has made a purchase relative to all other customers. And a score of 1 would indicate customers in the bottom 20% purchase frequency, potentially representing infrequent buyers. So as you can see, we are talking already about possible segmentation. On the other side, a score of 5 would identify customers in the top 20% of purchase frequency, highlighting potential loyal customers or even champions of the brand. Now, when we calculate frequency rankings, we can move on to the calculation of rankings related to monetary value as a part of RFM analysis. The function will be the same, such as in frequency score, but we will use column D, or the total amount each customer has spent in our business. In the H2, I will paste the formula. As you can see, the difference is that we are using D, A, B, C, D here for total amount that we needed. So now again, suggestion, and in this case I will have the monetary rankings. Now the last thing that we will need when we already have our ranks for R, F and M is to calculate the total RFM score using the concatenate function. In this case, we want in the column I all values for R, F and M into one cell as a 3-digit number. First for recency, second for frequency, and third for monetary value. So I will put the function in I2, concatenate function. Now we will have, for example, recency first, and it is the F2. The second is frequency, it is the G2, and the third is monetary score, and it is H2. Then if I put enter, it will ask me to group them. Suggest how to fill, not to group them. So I will accept because I see that 512 become 512. Now we get different segments, and it's up to you how you define and use them for decision-making purposes. For example, I can, let's say, sort to Z to A. So now I've seen who are the top performers, 555. Now we have all different segments, and it's up to you how you define and use them for decision-making purpose. So applying this percentile-based categorization to the core metrics of RFM analysis allows you to identify critical customer segments such as champions. Let's say we can say, okay, these will be champions, high scores across all RFM dimension, or 5 with 4 until here will be champions. We will have also potential loyalists. These customers will be recent buyers with good spending about average frequency, or at-risk customers, previously frequent buyers who haven't purchased it recently. This segmentation then enables to development and execution of targeted marketing and engagement strategies, simply adjusted or tailored to each segment's specific characteristics and needs. For example, champions might be rewarded with exclusive offers, while at-risk customers could be targeted with simply personalized campaigns to re-engage their interests. However, it is much better to continue with the analysis with visualization that can help you better segment your customers. For this purpose, I usually want to use heat maps. To visualize the distribution, we can create a three-dimensional RFM heat map where the frequency will be on the x-axis, recency on the y-axis, and monetary values will be represented by colors or color intensity. And this is a great way to visualize the interplay of all three dimensions inside RFM formula. Let's create such a visualization. First, I will create a new section in our spreadsheet. For example, here I will need 5x5 grid. Then I will enter frequency scores 1 to 5 as a column headers. And in the first row of our new section, starting from K2, and I will enter the number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So in this case, I will put to know that these are scores related to frequency. Next, I will enter recency scores that will be column here, and we will also have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now we need to create an appropriate function for this. Since a single cell in the grid represents a combination of recency and frequency, for example, this cell is 1 and 1, this cell will be for frequency 2 and recency 1, and this means that a single cell in the grid represents a combination of recency and frequency, and we want to color it based on monetary value. In this case, we'll calculate the average monetary score for all customers falling into that specific recency and frequency combination. So in the top left cell of our grid, and this is K3, I will enter the following average ifs formula. When we talk about D&D, this is the range containing your monetary values, or the total amount of the customer spent in the analyzed periods, as you can see it here. Regarding G, this is the range containing your frequency scores, as you can see it here. K2 cell, this refers to the frequency score in the current columns header, and the dollar sign keeps the row fixed when you drag the formula down. And the next part is F, this is the range containing recency scores, and the last part is $G3 cell, and this refers to the recency score in the current row header. Now I can easily drag the formula down to fill the recency scores for, in this case, frequency score 1. Let's drag it, and we will get the results. Now let's change the type of formatting, currency. So in this case we will have much better representation. What does it mean? When we have frequency score 1 and recency score 1, the average monetary value is $2,742. Next, I will use the same function. I will copy it and use it in the second column here, but the thing that I will need to change is K2 and it will be L2. Then again I will drag them down. If I again paste this function, now we will use M2 and drag below. Again I put the same formula, but now we are in N for frequency 4, so we will have N. Again I will drag all of this data, and in this case I'm using O. You can see that we get the mistake, but if I drag down to the recency 5 score, we can see that we get this data. Why this is the case? In O3 we have a mistake, but it is not the mistake, it is the case because we don't have in our data such a value for recency 1 and frequency 5. If we check our data, let's say find the 1, where is 1, the recency. Okay, you can see we have 1, 4, frequency in this case is G. We don't have such a result in our data, and because of that it means that we can delay this. So now that we have all the results in 5x5 grid, we can apply conditional formatting for the heat map with blue or red or whatever color you want to use for the highest monetary value. In this case I will select the entire data range of our grid. Now I will go to format and use conditional formatting. Now I will go to color scale. You can see that automatically created the scale of colors, but we can also change, let's say, red. So now our grid will look like this. Now you have a heat map where the x-axis represents the frequency score 1 to 5, the y-axis represents the recency scores 1 to 5, and the color intensity of each cell represents the average monetary value for customers in that specific recency and frequency segments, with red indicating the highest average monetary value, score 5. As you can see here we have 5 and 5, and it is the highest average spending in this case. However, I must mention some important consideration about this grid. First, using the average monetary score provides a general overview. If you have a strong skew in your data, this may not represent every customer in that segment. For a more granular view, you could potentially use a script or a more advanced data visualization tool that allows for true 3D heat maps or other representation of 3 variables. I will make another separate video for such visualization. However, the conditional formatting approach in Google Sheets is a good way to have some visualization with these available tools. Look for areas in your heat map that are intensely red, and these represent customers who buy frequently, recently, and spend a lot on average, making them your most valuable segments. So we come to the end. Thanks for watching this guide, and if you want more similar guides, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and comment on what you would like to be covered in the next videos.